Okay, today I'm recording a magic lesson for you, and I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Seraph, I don't have any kids in my family. I don't need to know magic tricks. Well, I think it doesn't matter because the stuff I'm going to show you is like literally so easy that it's going to be worth it, even if there's just a tiny chance that you'll use it to silence some child, or if you end up homeless and have to busk on the streets for money. This stuff is so practical, it's so effective that you can do it by itself. I'm going to show you techniques that allow you to improvise magic, but I'm also going to, there are also techniques that are going to allow you to take any tricks that you already know or happen to learn and make them much, 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 much better. So very, very, very practical sort of emergency survival stuff that I think everyone should know. I mean, if you become like an uncle or a grandpa, then I think you're like legally required to start pulling coins from people's ears. And a lot of people know the thumb trick, but it's like, how many jokes do you know? How many interesting bits of trivia do you know? But magic, no, you probably don't know very much. Probably can't do a magic trick to save your life. Not that you'll ever have to, hopefully, but some stuff is just so easy. There's just no excuse not for knowing it. So I've been playing with a deck of cards. The deck of cards is ordered ace through king in each suit, because even though apparently I shuffled and cut it, I actually did a deck switch that I'm going to teach you, a false shuffle that I'm going to teach you, and a false triple cut that I'm going to teach you. But before we get to that, I'm going to start with what you can do when you don't have a deck of cards, because you don't always have a deck of cards. So we're going to start with, what can you do if you have nothing? Well, if you have nothing, you do the thumb trick, right? But there's actually a more modern thing if you're going to do something that dumb. There's a more modern version of this where you bend the thumb. Almost, okay. Not as young as I used to be, but this is a dumb. I mean, if you're doing dumb tricks anyway, you might as well make that dumb trick better. This is something that everyone should know you can do with nothing but your hands. You just use your index and middle fingers and take them on either side of your thumb. That's going to be your false thumb, and then you leave a hole here, and you make a thumbs up with your left hand, and you stack them on top of each other, so your thumbs start aligned. And this is a got your nose pose, if that's an easier way to remember it. But yeah, from this point, you can just twist. You counter twist as long as this hand is facing front or you're seeing the back. It provides a pretty convincing illusion, and you want continuity of motion and then a little bit of acting, and then you just pull the left thumb straight out, and then at the same time pull your right thumb out, and then just relax your hand and wave it for misdirection. So yeah, if you're doing this dumb trick, okay, you can at least make it better by adjusting your grip and bending your thumb. That's a modern classic, and I think should be the new standard. Now, if you have access to a coin, the easiest thing to do is produce it from thin air, and that's actually surprisingly easy to do with a Downs palm. So a Downs palm is you hold something in the crook of your thumb, so that if you hold your if you point the plane of your hand towards your audience, the coin is obscured. And this doesn't just work with coins, actually. I have some examples, some other similar objects. Bottle cap, finger ring, a marble, Animal Crossing New Horizons, or an SD card, a small key. All of these you can fit in the same palm. And with your fingers curled, it's relatively obfuscated. And then the position from the front and the back of your hand looks really, really natural and convincing. So it's very, very relaxed, very, very relaxed, very open. So just over here, and then if you just relax, then catch it in your fist, you can seem to pluck it out of the air. If you want to get a little bit fancier, you can do a production with a coin. You use your index and middle fingers on either side of the coin, pinch it, extend your fingers out, and then you can pinch it like that. And so you can imagine a point in space where the coin's coming from. You reach over to it. once it's flat like this, it's barely visible until you turn it, and then it becomes visible. And so if you just extend it out to that point and then pluck away, it seems like it just came out of that point. And then you can just, easily go and seem to pluck it from somewhere. Or if you want to be a little bit fancier, you can load it against a surface and really make it seem like it's coming from that surface. So if the back of your hand is to the audience, your fingers are going behind something, and then you have to turn your hand either this way or this way to push it against something, and then you're pinching it out like that. Or if you're in this direction over here, your fingers will extend behind and push it the same way without your hand rotating, and you pluck it out the same way. So with that motion, you can seem to pluck it out from the surface like that, or you can seem to pluck it out from my ear, as is tradition, anything like that. So that's something you can do with basically, a whole range of small objects. You can hide them in Downspawn. You can seem to produce them from thin air relatively easily. So that's sort of your second level. If you have nothing, okay, well you can do finger tricks. If you have a coin, you can do a production. Now, if you have a coin and a table, it's not so much what can you do as what can't you do. For example, I can make a little transformation here from 1 coin into 2. That's just one of many, many, many effects that you can improvise if you just use a lap vanish, which is probably the easiest sleight of hand move in the history of Magic. I literally just slide something to pick it up off of a table. When it gets to the edge of the table, I miss my thumb and pretend to pick it up, and it just falls into your lap. Or in this case, I got a little pad set up behind the table for filming convenience. But it's like the most, as opposed to like a traditional sleight of hand move, like the French drop, where it's like, there's so much going on in that's working against you, where you've got an awkward position, nobody holds a coin this way, then you have to practice having this hand not react as if the coin's in it, and having this hand react as if the coin is in it. You got to practice that, and then once the coin's vanished, it's like this hand is immediately suspect, and the coin's in it, so you're not clean. But with a table lap vanish, it's like try picking up a coin off of a table without sliding it to the edge. I mean, you need fingernails at the very least, but it's such a natural movement to just pick it up. Just pick it up with your fingertips. You just slide it to the edge of the table to get your thumb under it, and then it's secured in your fingers, and your fingers tend to naturally cover it. So there's nothing to do. You just have to slightly miss your thumb, and then you've got like a really, really great vanish. Right, so to do the transformation, I just had 2 coins in Downspawn, and then I made a fist, vanished the coin, produced the alternates. But we could also do a penetration effect. It's really easy to do a restoration effect. You can also do any number of mentalism effects. For example, I've got some slips of paper here, numbered 1 through 6, and I can place them in a mug, or apparently place them in a mug, actually switching them for duplicates, and then know that if somebody reaches in and pulls out a paper, it's going to be the number 4 because I just switched out the stack. So you could substitute a regular coin for a double-headed coin. You could substitute a die for fake die. I mean, it's just like the sky's the limit. It's like you can do almost anything with just a lap vanish. It's like the most easy, versatile sleight of hand move there is. Okay, so we covered finger tricks, productions of small objects, and standard effects with other objects that, again, are easy enough that you can just improvise with the sugar at the restaurant table, just anything that you have access to. So now we're going to get to card tricks, and probably the easiest. There's a couple of categories of card tricks that are easy, but that you can readily improve with false shuffles, false cuts, and deck switches. So there's a lot of tricks that are mathematical in nature. Some you might know, and they just require that the cards stay in a relative order. There's also tricks that require you to stack part of the deck and with specific cards in a specific order. That's a partial stack. And then there are other tricks that you can do that require the entire deck to be stacked. And for example, Since this deck is in sequence, I'll show you a decent trick that you can do is have the deck cut into 3 piles, and then I can immediately say, this is the 10 of diamonds, this is the 6 of spades, and this is the 3 of hearts, right? So this is a mentalism trick, or you could pull a prank on somebody by claiming that these cards were marked, and then challenging them to find the markings on the cards, which are non-existent. These are just ordinary playing cards. But this is one thing you can do with a sequence deck of cards. If I cut the deck here, for example, because the cards are in sequence, I know that the card on top of the deck is the 7 of hearts. If I have a card picked out of the deck, right, and I just cut it at that point and look at the bottom card, I see it's the 5 of diamonds, so I know that this card is the 6 of diamonds. So I could pretend to read somebody's mind or make a prediction or something like that very, very easily. It's almost as if the cards are marked, and you can convincingly make it look like they are, right? So the way I do that is if I look at the bottom card, which is the 8 of spades, right, I know that the next card in sequence is the 9 of spades, so that's the top card, right? So without looking at it, I know that the top card is the 9 of spades. If I cut the deck into 3 piles, what I can do is use the one ahead principle to make it seem like I know the identity of each of these cards. I miscall this as the 9 of spades, and then just look at it, and it's really the 3 of hearts. So I say, this is the 9 of spades, this is the 3 of hearts, this is the Queen of diamonds, right? And then I'm back at the 9 of spades, and then I just did a bottom deal, pushing out the top card, and then actually pulling out the bottom card to reverse their order. So that's how I made it seem like I knew all of the cards, when really I just knew the one. Just an example of something you can do with a fully stacked deck of cards. And you can probably think of many other things that you could do with that, but basically any stacked deck trick, any trick that requires a partial stack, or any mathematical card trick can be made much more convincing if you can shuffle the cards before and during the trick. And that's actually not as hard as it sounds. There are a lot of false shuffles and a lot of false cuts. Many of them are quite technical and challenging, but not all of them are. So first, just a simple reversal of a cut is like the first thing that you need to worry about. So I've got this deck in sequence. This is the bottom card of the sequence, and I just give it a little bit of a bend, right? And then what happens is if I cut the cards, there's going to be a natural break there that I can see, and I can just break the cards there to undo any cut. And with nice cards like this, I'm using, these are bicycle cards. Any deck made by the United States Playing Card Company or similar quality cards that have a nice finish will prevent the cards from sticking together. And then if you cut the deck and just apply light pressure and just lift up, it breaks at the bottom card anyway, that card with that bend in it. So you don't even have to look to undo cuts. But with that, you can cut the deck as many times as you can, and you can have other people cut a deck of cards as many times as you want. And then you can always, and again, with a nice quality deck, without even looking, cut the deck and restore it to a particular full deck stack order. So that's step 1. Step 2 is a Charlier false shuffle, right? Which I did earlier, and it's sort of meant to look like it's almost like an in the hands wash, but really it's just a cut. So it's not something that's like super. It's not traditional. It's a little weird looking, but yeah, that's sort of what it reminds me of. It's like an on the table wash done in the hands. And the way it works is you just take a chunk of cards from the top of the deck, and then you alternate going from the left hand to the right hand until the entire deck is in your right hand, taking cards from the bottom of the left hand to the top of the right hand, and then from the top to the bottom, bottom to top, top to bottom, bottom to top, top to bottom. And then that results in a cut, and you just undo the cut, and the deck's back in order. So you're just doing a series of small cuts which amount to one cut, which you can just undo, and you make it more convincing and make it look more like a mix by spreading the cards out a little bit to the side and to the top, and by sort of rotating your hands a little bit as you're doing it, and that just makes it look sloppier. And I mean, you just do it sloppy, and then the deck's right back where it was. So that's the easiest and the most sort of bang for your buck of false shuffles. And then there's a really easy false triple cut, called, it was made by a magician called JOC. So this is the JOC false triple cut, and all you do is you literally just lift up the top third of the deck from your hand, put it on the table to your left, lift up the next third, put it in the middle, take the final third and put it on the right. Then you put the top third onto the middle third and the top and middle thirds onto the bottom third. So you just reassembled the deck. So, you know, false triple cuts are always partially effective because there's sort of a, you know, shell game 3-card Monty situation trying to track the different thirds. But then also, like, this particular cut looks very, very similar to if I just lifted up 2 thirds and then a third and broke it like this and then reassembled, then this would be the top and bottom thirds reversed. So it looks very, very similar to an actual triple cut. So just done quickly and casually, it is very easy and very convincing. And in the combination of, you know, just casually talking and not paying attention to what you're doing, doing a Charlie or false shuffle, and then combining that with a undo cut and then a false triple cut, you know, most people would swear that the cards must have changed order, but they did not. So another advantage of this particular false shuffle and false cut is that you really don't need really great cards to do it. You know, things that are more technical really benefit from having higher quality playing cards. These you can do with like plastic cards. They're simple enough that you can do them under pretty much under any condition. But yeah, the limitation of false shuffles and false cuts is always that it's only you who can do the false shuffles and false. Although you can instruct somebody to do a JOC false triple cut. You can tell them the sequence of steps to do, and you know it's it's subtle and convincing enough that you'll probably get away with having them do that as well. And then of course they can cut the cards as much as they want, because you can always undo them, undo just a single cut. But what's really preferable is for you to have a completely separate deck of cards that you're trading in. So you have a duplicate deck, because then you can just shuffle it for real, right? You can shuffle it, other people can shuffle it, and it's like, well, you can make everyone really satisfied that the deck is properly shuffled and randomized, and it doesn't matter because you're not using this deck, you're using this deck. You know? So very effective. And there's also some very nifty and technical ways to do deck switches that are very clever and very pretty looking. But there's 2 techniques that I'm going to show you there. One's really easy and one's really flexible, and they're not too bad. So those are the ones that I'm going to recommend. The second one that I did in the video was earlier on in this video, that is, was a Joker switch. Here's my cold deck, because it hasn't been worn by hands. That's the cold deck. This is the hot deck, right? So I've got my, or let's say this is a better hot deck. I've got 3 decks here. Trying not to get confused. But I have my hot deck, which is regularly shuffled, and then I'm going to take a break from playing with the cards. So I put the cards away in a card box, and I put the card box away, and then later I take out the other deck of cards, my stack deck, as if it were the same deck. Now, especially if you do it like within, you know, just a couple minutes of putting the other deck away, this is not particularly convincing, right? So the way this Joker subtlety works is you take out your first deck of cards, which is going to be the hot deck, and it comes with a pair of Jokers that you then discard to the side. It doesn't literally have to be Jokers. Like you can actually do it with the card box itself. You could accidentally drop a card, but you're gonna in the traditional formulation, you have the Jokers over here to the side where you're going to forget them, right? So you're intentionally going to forget them after you're done with your hot deck. You go to put it away, and then once you've put it away, you realize, and this is just very, very basic acting, that you've forgotten to put the Jokers back with the deck. So you take out the Jokers and you bring back out the deck, which is now the cold deck, and you return the Jokers to the card pack, right? So that's the subtlety. It's I just take out the hot deck, put it away, and then I take out the cold deck, but I've given myself a pretext, a psychological pretext that makes sense of why I would do that. Of like, no, I put it away and I was intentionally putting it away, and then I had to take it back out because of those jokers. And then there's also the element of a complete deck of cards always has a pair of jokers in it. So when I take this cards out, I intentionally made sure that it didn't have its own pair of jokers. So it seems like, this has to be the same deck of cards, because why would I want two sets of jokers? Well, there aren't two pairs of jokers because I planned for that in advance. So this is the easiest deck switch to do. Very easy, very convincing, but it does require that you temporarily put the cards away, which is why it's not necessarily all that flexible. So I'm going to show you, even though that's really easy and really convincing, I'm going to show you sort of the general strategy, which is winging in half stacks, and that's the first switch I did in the video. So I've got my unordered deck of cards. I'm going to switch it for this ordered deck of cards, my stack deck. So this is face up in my lap, or like under, it can really be anywhere. That's the whole point. In this case, I've just got it down here under the table, right? So I just place the deck sort of deep in my left hand and then step it like this. And that way I can take up this top half, turn my hands inward, and then this hand, the deck is hidden. It's a little bit of an awkward position. And if I turn the cards, it helps hide the depth of the cards and the fact that this is only half of a deck and not a full deck. But this hand can then safely go out of view into a pocket or a table or something, because the deck's here, right? So your guilty hand seems less guilty because the deck is apparently in full view. And then while your guilty hand is out of view, it can steal half of your cold deck, and then you bring your hands back together into the same position that they were just in, and now half the deck has been switched. You can cut and do a stepped cut to keep the half separate, and so now half the deck has been switched, and then I can just repeat the sequence again, right? I can pick up the deck, I can ditch the second half of the hot deck, I can steal the second half of the cold deck, and then I bring my hands back together, and then I complete the cut. And what's great about this technique, you can do it at your leisure, right? It doesn't matter that it's not technical, because you can choose your moments at will, right? You just need to decide when you can get away with it, because you can stop at any time and look really clean. So, I've got my cold deck down here, I've got my hot deck here, right? And I'm just gonna wait for an opportune moment. I'm gonna make a joke, I'm gonna ask a question, I'm gonna wait for somebody to take a drink, and then I'm gonna do this, right? I'm gonna do step one, where I ditch the cards, and now I can come up, and now I can sit here for minutes very comfortably, because it looks like the deck is still here. And then I can, whenever I think I can get away with it, I can steal the first half of the hot deck, bring my hands together, do a stepped cut. I can walk away, and I can go to the kitchen and make a drink right now, right? I'm half done. And for a lot of tricks, especially like tricks that only require a partially stacked deck, this is all you would need. Like, you would be done after just that. But if you want to do the entire deck, yep, you can go right back. You can decide, when's convenient. Depending on the exact situation, you can get a pretext for going into a pocket or something. So, for example, I could go to ditch. I could go to my pocket to get like a tissue or a candy or a piece of gum or something like that. And so then I'm going there with the cards, bring that thing out, then go to put it back, steal the second half of the deck, and then bring my hands back together, and then I'm done, right? So very, very, very flexible. You can be going in, under the table, under your leg, into a pocket, into a bag. It really doesn't matter, because at pretty much all times you can look relatively clean. It's like, this isn't that suspicious. Even if somebody sees the deck's stepped, like this, it's like, well, that's not that suspicious. You can just, you can just clean it up like that. You step the cut like that. There's nothing odd there. If I just cut the deck, somebody sees this, well, that's not odd. It's only odd until you go down and drop it. But if you come back with a half and recombine your hands, again, then it's like, it's really safe looking. That's safe looking. Safe. So very, very, very easy. And again, you can do it at your leisure. You can also do it fast though, if you want, which is how I did it in the beginning of the video. And so I'll just show you, for the sake of completeness, exactly what I did. I had this deck down here like this, and did a shuffle. Then while I was cutting the cards, I grabbed the first half of the cold deck, stepped cut, and then I did a lap vanish essentially of the first half of the hot deck. So I do a lap vanish, bring my hands together, cut again, steal again, lap vanish, cut again, right? So this is to show you, you can do it in one smooth continuous motion if you want, but you just don't have to. So, you know, this should work under most conditions, because again, you don't even technically need to be at a table, right? All right, so there you have it. You know, if all you've got are your hands, you can do thumb tricks, make your niece or nephew laugh. But if you've got access to a coin or small object, especially if you've got access to, you know, a coin and a table, you can start doing lap vanishes and such. And if you've got cards, you can start doing a lot of tricks that will fool even most adults. So have fun.